You. Straight YouTube.
Okay, I'm going to call this call to order the planning commission meeting on January 27th, 2025. And everybody is here in the room except Laura, who said she would not be here. And of course, welcome Megan. We've already probably all welcomed her anyway, but we're going to have a busy year doing updates on the land use code. Should be very interesting. First order of business, nomination for the chair.
I'll nominate Obi.
I guess I'm going to nominate Tony. Thank you.
And I've thought about this and I went home, talked to my wife and I said, hey, you know what? This is exactly what happened at the last meeting. And I said, Tony would do a fine job. He'd be a good chair. And I don't see any reason that he shouldn't be. So I'm going to withdraw my name from nomination.
And Obi, I think we all appreciate the work that you did over the last year and a half. That was excellent.
Only a year and a quarter, but thank you very much, Jerry.
It seemed like even less.
Yeah. Any other nominations? Okay, I guess we should vote anyway to see what kind of thing we have. How many are for Tony to be chair?
I'll abstain out of.
And Tony, out of modesty, is abstaining. Nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Mary.
Okay.
Any other nominations? All in favor of Mary? Who knows more about planning than any of us on the committee?
Combined.
Absolutely. Very good. Okay, on we go. Any ex parte communications or disclosures?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. I'm just making sure I've not skipped anything.
We're doing it.
Okay, I haven't so far. Approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Let's second that motion.
Seconded. Any discussion?
I had a question. Were we on the general business items? It says planning commission goals and objectives for 2025. Was I seeing, for some reason, I kind of remember that we were like asked to give input for the ADO and HDHO. Is that correct?
That people were supposed to give input, right?
Was it for future considerations?
I had that people were supposed to get to me with their suggestions on the bylaws.
Oh,
Correct.
That's
I
what-
didn't see a red line copy of those bylaws, but
No, did not have time.
that's okay.
Where was I remembering we had the recommendation to give our inputs for ADO and HDHO?
do not know. We may have discussed it because I was vaguely, when I got an email that you addressed to me, I also put in a little bit of stuff on the HDHO, but I don't remember if it was very
I
formal.
remember very specifically
Yeah.
something given to us where we were asked to give input on that.
I am not remembering that.
Yeah, I'm just
Um,
kind of like,
So I remember the bylaws were passed out and we all agreed, and it's in the minutes, to get suggestions to staff by January 20th. And then with the goals and objectives, I remember us talking about discussion on possible LUC revisions for housing.
yeah,
And that we were just going to discuss it again. I don't like it. That was one of the top.
Yeah, I
goals and
threw out a
objectives.
date, but that date was already a busy day, I think, today.
Oh,
And then we bumped it another week.
we had it was a separate document that was like things to address. I remember because it was in a weird type.
Was it the goals and objectives?
Yeah,
of it?
and that's where
Okay.
we had that. And I guess that's where I'm like,
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up, Aaron.
yeah.
It is in a weird font.
Yeah.
Here, let me, I can share that. Hang on 1 second and I'll share it on my screen. Forgot to ask to share. Okay, fantastic. Okay. I think this is what you're talking about. Does this look familiar? In the weird font?
Yeah,
Okay,
so if we go down. So this was things to be looked at. That's the ADO and HDHM. I guess Amy, for that email you sent me, I'm just bringing that up. I'm like. It kind of, that email was like, I kind of felt like you were like, why are you bringing that up? It was that line right there.
The brainstorm part.
Yeah, and so. I guess just not to draw out the minutes. I guess I'm having the feeling like we're supposed to be gathering information for consultants. Correct? Is that what you want us to do?
so. I'm gonna try to think how best to say this. So the planning commission, one of the responsibilities of the planning commission is to recommend potential code revisions to the county commission. So as the commission meets and talks about this land use code revision that's coming and what you'd like to see as far as like priorities and ideas and suggestions, that is definitely something that this planning commission can do.
Mm.
And so, but those recommendations, we talked about maybe compiling a list of those that would then be given to the consultant and also to the county commission, because the planning commission proposes recommendations to the county commission. And then the county commission says, yeah, go do this 5 out of 10 or whatever it is they might say. So that's why we added it to our goals and objectives for 2025, because it's not just this body, it's the consultant that's eventually hired and it's the county commission's recommendations also. So it's a very long process.
Right.
So, but yes, we can certainly look at how to make these sections better, but we don't get to vote on that. We just provide the recommendations. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I completely get it.
Okay.
I guess my misunderstanding was, like, I thought the assignment was start coming up with our things
Got
right
it.
now.
Okay.
And that's why I sent that email,
Got it.
because
Okay.
I'm like, oh, okay, like, what's the county have appetite? What's the general commission have appetite for? And then,
Got it.
that's why I was, I guess, in response to your email, that's
Got
why
it.
I'm like, okay,
Understood.
we'll ask
Okay.
what they're wanting for, so then we can now
Yeah,
ask, that I guess that's where I'm.
I understand.
And let me just ask a quick question, although we will at some point, we aren't voting on ordinances and stuff. We will at some point come to some kind of consensus
Correct.
that, yeah, these are the 6 or 7 things. And we might even have 5 things that everybody agrees on and 2 things that, 2/3 of the people think are important, that kind of.
My recollection was that we had that scheduled as a discussion item for the February 10th meeting. Where if we had like a matrix of like this code tweak it that way, and we could try to like prioritize, let's put that one on the top of the list. This is a must have, this is a would like. Was my understanding. That was a big or part of the business for the February 10th meeting, right? Did anybody else?
Well,
Mhm.
we also had a discussion about gathering data on what worked and what didn't.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh yeah, thanks, Jerry.
And I think
Mhm.
that should be a big part of what guides us through that discussion, because you do more what worked and less what
Amen.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't know, do we want to add any of that to the minutes? It was a good discussion we had.
Mhm.
It's a good refresher.
Yeah. Yeah, did you want something additional in there, Aaron, about just maybe saying at the February 10th meeting, everybody agreed to talk about housing suggestions? Looks like maybe we didn't get that in there. You just want some more
Oh,
detail?
I was just reviewing it because I was
Okay.
like, oh, maybe I misunderstood something, so, I mean, I'm into approving it, but.
Okay,
Any more discussion
That
for
was
the
the
minutes?
discussion.
got it, okay.
No more, we did have a motion to approve them, so, all in favor of approving the minutes? That's unanimous for the people here.
Sure, quick question.
Yep.
Did we vote Tony in as chair?
we usually finish it.
I
up.
get to.
No, that's what I was like.
It's okay.
I don't care. I just was
I don't usually.
wait, hold on a second. I was.
No, at the end of
Because
it, we
I was
all
gonna
gotta
ask
put them
you.
up on our shoulders. Hey, on the-
There's the
take
party
that.
and then there's the, the money you give me.
Yeah.
No, I read it in the minutes myself. I get to go through the end, and so does Jerry,
Through the end of the meeting,
through the end of the meeting. Any citizens to be heard?
It's here for the meeting.
we have one person on.
Anyone online want to make a statement? Guessing that's enough. Okay, Trish, you're up.
Okay, so, from the January 22nd, or sorry, what was, I don't remember, I have January 27th, which is today. But anyways, a couple items from the county commission and then a couple just other kind of statements. So as you know, the county commission overrode the recommendations of the planning commission to approve Ellie Swanson and appointed Megan Schaefer. That was 4-3 in favor of that motion. Kind of just a personal statement on that is, it is rare for the county commission to override recommendations of their citizen body, so I was a little disturbed by that. It has happened, at least in my tenure there. The one time that I remember it happening, it was because the recommending body had not followed state statute in their recommendations, and so, yeah, I was a little discouraged by that, because I do think the recommendations that come out of these bodies should be honored by the county commission, and whatever they might be. So that's just that, nothing personal, just a little discouraged by, the legislative process there. The resolution approving the final plat for the San Juan PUD was approved with 3 workforce housing units with deed restrictions, so yay on that, and that passed unanimously. And then a couple things that I have kind of brought up via emails, and I'd like to bring up again, things that I would like to see in the land use code revisions. 2 things, source protections for groundwater sources, specifically sole source aquifers. This pertains to the Glen Canyon Aquifer System and the Castle Valley Aquifer System as delineated by the Environmental Protection Act. I think it's something that is in our land use code, but needs some tweaking and things we've talked about. And I think it's just very important we address that this year with the consultants. And the second is the integration of a CWPP, the Community Wildlife Protection Plan, to address wildlife risks within the wildlife urban interface. And I think specifically with what's going on in Southern California, it's now time to address that. And there's excuse me,
Wildfire.
yeah.
CW.
Oh, sorry, was I saying that wrong?
It's
Sorry
okay.
about that. Sorry, did say wildlife.
Could you-
I wonder.
Trish, could you say
Wildfire.
that slower? Community,
CWPP, Community Wildfire, not Wildlife Protection Plan, sorry about that. And I just think with what's going on in Southern California, it's just time to address that. I think, we don't have a lot of areas that are within that interface, but I think it's something we really need to look closely at, and specifically in the resources that we have and how do we want to expend those resources. flat out heard TJ Brewer say like, we're not gonna be able to defend Willow Basin. You know, and I think there's probably a lot of facts in that. So, you know, just looking at those places that are at risk, and how do we defend them and how do we basically plan so that we're not putting more people in those areas that are at risk and we can't defend.
I gotta jump in real
Yes.
quick.
Yes, I am,
Acting in my role as the Division of Forestry guy, not as a planning commissioner, speaking very clearly in that context. The Division of Forestry receives correspondence all the time from the fuel reduction work that we do in the wildland urban interface. A great example of the value of this work is a lot of people think it's just like gardening for rich people up on the mountain. That is not the case. A good example is that there was like a grease fire in a kitchen in a cabin up on the mountain. So a structure fire that had received fuel reduction work around its property. That structure burned down and the fire did not spread into the forest. That's a two-way street.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
and so it kind of works both ways.
right.
A lot of the wildfires that we're seeing in our region, I'm not about, don't know about California, but you know, utility lines, transportation corridors, the things that need to have maintenance done around them.
Yeah.
Just pointing that out there.
Yeah.
Right, back into planning commissioner mode.
Thank you.
I would add in the planning commission mode, amen to all of those. And I do think it's always important. You know, lots of people think about, you know, wildland to urban interface as, oh my goodness, it might burn up a house. But it works two ways. It might burn up a forest and then go down and burn up houses. Excuse me, Aaron.
Oh, no,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, I just. I'm waiting. I was just looking through, because my job deals with codes. I did see the International Code Council has a whole thing on like urban or wild, like interface.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, right.
I like, do you guys know, like, do we adopt that? Did Utah adopt that and then we can apply that? Is that kind of
I
like?
can put my,
So,
Oh, yeah.
It's a building.
That's an Amy, good
Yeah.
question.
so if you look at the code, we do have LUC 6.9.6, which talks about wildfires. And so it specifically says areas above 6,000 feet elevation, which is interesting. So maybe that's something to look at
Yeah.
adjusting. But it does require certain things for folks in those areas. It says class A or B roof coverings, fire resistant siding materials, spark arresters, a clear zone, which we call a fuel break, fire sprinklers, emergency water supplies. So it talks about defensible space. It talks about what you do in zone 1. It talks about zone 2. So it goes into all of that in 6.9.6, but I do think it needs to be updated based on current codes that have passed.
I
Yeah.
guess my question is can we just adopt the International Code Council's thing? And then it's because from what I understand, like Utah adopts the ICC and then like they have their chapters. And if we could just adopt that, then it's like the cake's baked, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
we have
we'll look at that, Aaron.
I'll put you in touch with John Wagand, this regional buoy coordinator. And he can help you guys out with, I don't know what rules there are.
Yep.
There's a guy for that.
Absolutely. I mean, Bill Holtz, because the building department generally adopts.
Yeah, yeah.
The WUI code usually deals with more like, not just the building, but landscaping and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's its own little book.
Yeah, so check out 6.9.6
Yeah.
and our code. It is pretty extensive, but we might want to change that elevation. I'm not sure where that
Right.
elevation came from. So something to think about.
6,000 feet is kind of like a
Tree
standard.
line? Is-
Yeah, that the Forest Service uses in very broad strokes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That's where,
Yeah, those are just two.
Yeah,
that's where cotton is turned into junipers.
That's it.
great.
Chris,
Thank you.
Nothing else there. Okay. And
Oh, other than,
next,
sorry, and I
Oh,
do
go.
have to leave. I'm the same, sorry, this is my last night of Conrad.
That's
Sorry, so I'll
It's
have
okay.
to leave in about 45 minutes. Sorry, my apologies.
all right.
next up is the consideration of the bylaws
Yeah,
and I know of, two places that we probably are gonna get into at least, and then other people can suggest things. There's two places where there's this voting, how you vote,
Right.
section 4.3 and, one other place. Yeah, it's the one that, just over here at 3.2, C. And then the other one that somebody brought up, I think is correct, is the address might not be correct for the planning commission, planning staff. I guess it got changed.
Well, you guys moved, they moved.
Yeah, so do people have others in there going through the,
And Obi, would you mind saying what you would like to see changed in those?
well, I think Aaron and I have probably different things. I would personally, but I'd live with either, I would get rid of, in section 4.3, the very first paragraph. If requested by the chair, written ballots may be used for voting purposes. Think how clean it is just to get rid of it. Oh, stop that. And what was the other number I mentioned here, in section? In the very first 3.2 on elections for chair, down in part C, the exact same words. That would mean that when we vote for people like Megan or for chair and vice chair, we would do it not by ballots that then would of course be read, but we would just do it by hands the way we did tonight. And I don't know the address, but you do.
Oh, okay, yeah, we will make sure.
Good.
And Jerry sent me some suggestions. It was one cleanup item in section 5.12. The word "there shall be no debate or argument between individuals" is repeated. I'm assuming this is an error. So
Yeah.
that was one.
Jerry
Thank
did
you.
think it was for emphasis.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it. I did, yes.
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't think it was for emphasis.
Okay,
Grammatically, I don't think it's correct the way it is.
When just a second, when I notice little things like that in my time drafting public policy stuff, there's usually other errors in the paragraph because you make that mistake when you feel things about it. And so
Uh-oh,
I'm gonna read this one a little bit more closely. Good catch, Jerry.
oh, there you go.
yes, I see that, Jerry.
Yeah.
It
Doesn't make
it could be for emphasis.
Or just
But
a
I think,
reminder.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know
the
if it's
con-
necessary, but it could be
Yeah.
for emphasis.
So the context of this that I'm reading is not, I think, Jerry, the spirit of this phrase gets at the point that during public comments that members of the audience are not to address correspondence to each other,
right,
which
that's,
is what it, like, I don't have the words off the top of my head, but that's not really what this says. There shall be no debate or argument between individuals is,
In the audience.
yeah, in the audience, first of all,
which I think. is-
and also debate is exactly what we're here to do. So I don't,
I think what you're doing is making the case to strike that standalone sentence,
Yeah, I would agree.
the one that follows,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sorry, I was.
and that's. Yeah,
I
that's where I was.
was locked in.
Okay.
And so are we saying that would strike and there shall be no,
No,
Yeah, the second-
The
the
second,
sentence afterwards, there shall be
Yeah.
no debate or argument between.
got you. Okay, that makes sense to
Kind
me.
of fits into Tony's point, that was my reading.
Yeah.
yeah, got it. And then
Maybe that's
Jerry,
kind of a minor,
yeah, and then Jerry also had section V3, annual training. It may make more sense to change this to annual requirements and include the training requirements that are shown in that section, as well as review of ordinance 593, disclosure form, and annual ethics So I think you're right to spell out what those annual requirements are.
I
Right.
think it would be helpful just for clarity, especially for somebody like Megan who joins. She can go over the bylaws and everything is in. That makes sense.
Yeah. Let me read that one more time.
So the real question is, and I think Amy's working on it, what should that full thing read? This is V3.
So
That's
Jerry,
it.
yeah, annual requirements instead of annual training, right, for the header?
Yeah.
And then, include the training requirements that are shown in that section as well as. We could do it number form like this: 1, review of ordinance 593, 2, disclosure form, and 3, annual ethics pledge. So we could add that as an additional sentence.
Yeah, I think that would work out.
Okay,
I'd like to make that a recommendation for discussion.
No, I don't think we needed to, like, I think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Amy, you said OPMA too?
pardon me.
You said OPMA is on that list too, open and public meetings training? Just want to make sure we capture.
It is in the first sentence.
Okay,
But it's not in the numbers that Jerry's proposing. Yeah, so the first sentence says, required to attend an annual open meetings training as provided by Grand County or an online equivalent. Encouraged to attend the Citizen Planner Workshop by the Utah League of Cities and Towns or other.
I was just saying we might add, if we're going to list the other trainings in the list, we should probably add the open and public meetings
Yes.
training too, which is also, this is written before they changed the name from open meetings training to OPMA, Open and Public Meetings Act.
Okay, do you want to remove the open meetings training from the first sentence?
Just change it to the new title.
Or, yeah, I mean, my point is, if we're gonna list the courses, we list them all
Okay,
in the same list,
Yeah, you could
Sure.
just-
you know?
Yeah. Have it twice.
And,
okay,
and with the most up-to-date title of what the training is, but
okay,
it's odd to have some in the paragraph and some in the list.
got it, okay. I'm gonna say include in listed items. And we'll rewrite that accordingly. Okay. Okay. Those are Jerry's. And Obi mentioned his. Did anybody send me any and did I miss them? Did you send any?
Yeah, I thought on
Okay.
my email, I was like, I wanted to expand on section 5-10 that the chair on any vote could ask for a paper ballot that would be then revealed. That's not a hill I'll die on, but I'll just put a counter thing out there to Obi and let's vote on it.
So,
Okay, so he can do a written ballot at any,
At
for
any-
any,
On
okay,
any motion.
oh,
so I don't know about the legality of that. I'm not an expert on the legality and the Roberts Rules thing,
mm,
but I don't know if Robert's Rules allow that.
Mm.
And other sections of the code that's really deeply built in. I'm not saying that's not a bad idea. I'm just, you know, in the spirit of discussion.
yeah, because the bylaws don't apply to decisions that you're making as far as applications.
Yeah.
Also, the sections Obi were talking about were specifically in the context of our business appointing officers and
Mhm.
making personnel decisions among our own body, which is different than the record of land use determinations
Mhm.
that we use Robert's Rules for. So section 3.4 is like, that's the whole like, oh, I feel icky. I don't want to vote on my friends feeling. Whereas this is just counterpoint respectfully, like the business of like, we're gonna sit up here in a circle and decide what you're gonna do with your land, right?
I would agree with that.
But we don't know.
No, I'm 99% certain of that, that's a completely different item in your bylaws that talks about how you are supposed to function. Whereas voting on land use decisions this is an open public meeting and
State
there's
law.
rules and regs and state law about
Yeah.
that.
As
There's-
long as
that's-
your votes recorded. Right, like,
I just know it's to get technical about it, the section above that says, in the event of a question over procedures, Robert's rules of order prevail. And I don't know.
Yeah,
That's,
I
I think I am truly ignorant
You know what?
about whether or
Let's
not
figure
you
that,
can
but
use.
I'll keep the
writ-
personnel one. Oh,
Okay.
you know what, like,
Yeah.
too complicated.
Okay. Okay. And I think, Aaron, that was the only one you mentioned about the bylaw.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Well, I'm told that I do a red line of this and just run it by the attorney office. And if they say yes, then, I believe we have to send it to the county commission just for their final blessing. So,
Okay,
so we'll make those changes and I'll send the red line out to everybody so you can look at it. At the same time I send it to the attorney's office. So if you see anything I missed, please respond. Okay. Thank you.
we're moving
That's
right
what
along.
awful is.
Okay. Staff presentation on Canyonlands Ranch.
Sorry, guys.
subdivision app. Oh,
Real quick.
Oh.
That was a bullet under discussion and consideration of approval, so we're waiting on these are the
Deal.
changes we want. A motion, we're waiting on a motion for that. Did we take a motion to,
To approve the changes.
yeah,
are we waiting, do we do that before we hear from?
yeah, but
Lawyer?
it's, there's,
Yeah.
consideration of changes to bylaws is listed in action items,
Okay.
which is, implies a motion, a second.
So can I make a motion to have Amy summarize and redline and send out for final review and legal review?
Second,
And I guess that would be prior. Would we also say if we have no additional comments back to Amy that she send them on to?
well,
Planning, or-
I think this is kind of like the second call for changes to this, and we're voting on it, and we're just gonna send it up, and
Okay.
the lawyers and the county commission don't need our permission to make changes. Right, but we looked at this last time, we looked at it this time, we're just gonna do the thing. Yeah.
So then the motion is the first part of what you said. Amy has summarized red lines, send it out, send it on to legal for final review, and then on to planning commission for signature.
Is there any discussion?
Can I do a alternative motion that all that except for we keep the way it is?
So,
The part where the chair can decide whether or not for voting on new members.
I think Aaron is asked, Aaron's
Did you want to
motion
make
is,
an amendment?
I think
Yeah.
Aaron's amended motion is he'd like to keep the option for the chair to do written ballots for the voting of the members. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
That-
Okay,
okay.
so, do we have a second for that?
So that would be to keep, just understand, that would be to keep it as written now.
Except for the
Except,
other.
yeah, he's amending the motion that he just made, it needs a second. If anybody wants to second it. Yes, it dies for the lack of a second. Any other discussion on the motion at hand? Which is the one that Tony and Jerry made. All in favor of it? All opposed? One opposed, everybody else in the room for it. Of course, Laura Simonson. Okay, a staff presentation on the Canyonlands Ranch subdivision application.
Okay. Let me get Jaren online if you. Yeah, so the applicant is online. Hello, Jaren. I'm gonna run through just the proposed subdivision and I think Jaren is just here to listen in. And if we have any questions, he's available. So let me just pull up what we need here. I just accidentally closed. Give me a second. Okay. So I just want to run through really quick, what the planning commission's purview and responsibility is with this new, Senate bill or House Bill, Senate Bill 174. So, And it can be confusing. So what I want to do is just sort of run through this, if my computer would work. I'm gonna share my screen if I can. Which it doesn't. Here we go. So, when we are reviewing these that are part of this speedy subdivision process, the planning commission's job is really to look at the relevant code sections. And if you notice anything in reviewing the subdivision plat that is not meeting these relevant code sections, that's what you need to bring to this group. So, and we haven't really had any training or gone over this, so I apologize, but the first thing that staff does and that you would do is first look at what is the zoning of the property. So in this case, the property is range and grazing. So when you pull up the code on the website, you would first go to the zoning designation and read what it says, you know, what the purpose of it is. And then the use table talks about what uses are allowed, which you guys know. So all kinds of dwelling units are allowed in range and grazing. So that's sort of the first step is just, okay, what zone am I in and what are my parameters? So that's always the first thing to start with. And then in Article 5 are development standards. So part 1 is for residential districts, and it talks about density and dimensional standards. So that's again something to look at. This is a rather large parcel. I'll look, I can't remember exactly the acreage, but So-
About 570.
yes, so so what you would do is when you look at the residential development, the dimensional and density standards, which something went wrong and it disappeared from this, so I will pull it up for you on the code. I have to change the way I'm sharing my screen, I apologize. Okay, so. Here we go. This is what
That's so smart.
okay. So in Article 5 is the residential development standards and non-residential development standards. So 5.4 is residential districts. So you would go to this table and here's your range and grazing. So this is where you look at maximum density, how many units can you have per acre? Minimum lot size, so all new lots would have to be at least 5 acres. It also has front and street yard setbacks, which won't come into play until they submit building permits for a dwelling. So that's something that we would look at time of building permits. There is a minimum lot width, so that's the other thing to look at. And then the heights and building coverage, that all comes at the time of building permits. Okay, so the things you need to pay attention to are the maximum density, the lot size, right? And maybe the minimum lot width. So those are things to pay attention to when you're looking for the range and grazing zone. And these apply to any other residential zone that you might see as part of these subdivisions. You'll most likely see, because you're not going to be looking at multifamily subdivisions. So you'll be looking at SLR, which is small lot residential, LLR, which is large lot, RR, which is rural residential, and RG, range and grazing. So I'm just kind of orienting you to the code and where you would go to find these things. And then the other thing to pay attention to, hang on a second. In Article 6, there's also a lot about general development standards. So that talks about driveways and access, landscaping screening. I'll get there here. So Article 6, and a lot of this applies to commercial developments and other things. So when you're looking at a lot of this, it's outdoor lighting, it's signs, it's drainage. If you look at, and I'm not sure if you know this, when you're going through this website where our code is, when you click on an article and it takes you there, like it should, it's not doing it. The little plus symbol on the left allows you to see all the different sections that are in that article. So it's a little quicker to look for things. So as you're on this website, that's a good spot to go. So general site planning standards, this is where it talks about hazard areas, slope conditions, all those kinds of things. So as you're looking through that, the wildfires here, like we just talked about. So those are places to find some of those things. Floodplain standards are in there, but as you're going through a lot of this, call me if you have questions. And I wanted to just sort of orient you to this for right now. I didn't do a staff report on this one because this is kind of new and I wanted to make sure that we kind of ran through some of this. So Article 7 is where all the subdivision standards are. So Article 7 is where it talks about applicability, building lots, what type of lots, talks about street layouts, lots of stuff in here. And in this instance, none of this really applies. It goes into street design standards if someone was proposing a public street versus a private street. So that's where some of this is where.
The road is private,
Pardon me?
the road's gonna be private.
Correct. So if you got a subdivision for 30 houses and they were proposing a public street. These are the standards that I would put in the staff report saying, okay, they're going for a local type 1. And you would see where those standards are on this. And this is something that staff does in our development review team meetings that we have, is we run through this code with fire and the streets department and the engineer and the building. And so this is kind of what we do, is we run through all these code sections that are applicable to our departments. So there's all kinds of stuff in here. And if you haven't looked at it yet, I encourage you to look at it. Drainage is in here, which our county engineer, Dan Stenta, looks at. We notify GWISA when there's a subdivision that's in their service area, all those kinds of things. Brandon McGuffey from the fire department, he reviews all of this as well and made some comments on this subdivision. So that's all from the development review team as you think about some of those things. And then Article 9, if my computer would work, is where it talks about administration and procedures.
Yeah.
So this is where it says, okay, who's the land use authority for these various types of applications? So that's where a lot of that is. Talks about completeness, public notice, in case you haven't been here yet. So, so in this case, this is the subdivision section.
We made this decision.
Yeah, so it hasn't gotten online yet, so I'm gonna switch to something else, but 9.4 is where preliminary plat is, okay? And we have now added a section to that because we adopted the new rules and regs. So I'm gonna pull that up. If it will let me. Okay. So here is what was adopted. I put it up on the screen. So this was the changes that were made at the end of 2024. So this, it added under Article 8, who the administrative land use authority is. So it does say the planning director or their designee shall serve as the administrative land use authority. And then it goes on to duties and responsibilities, and then it goes into Article 9, 9.4, which we just saw, and this language was added for single family, 2-family, and townhouse subdivisions, see 9.18. So 9.18 is where all the new stuff is, okay? So it does say applies to single family, 2-family, or townhomes. So it goes in to explain that. You guys have seen this. So we did have a pre-application conference with the applicant. So they they requested one, they have to request, we can't require in this process. They had a pre-app with us and we made some suggested changes. And then they submitted their actual preliminary plat application. So that's what you are looking at this evening. So some changes have been made to the plat already, which is why it says revised. I didn't change the name, but so some changes have been made based on comments during the pre-app, and we've had one development review team meeting on this so far. And so the applicants made some changes based on a lot of those comments. And so we are in this review cycle that we all try to wrap our brains around. So we get a maximum of 4 review cycles. And so we had 20 days to do our development review team meeting. And then they have 20 days to respond to those comments.
And that's where they're at right now.
Correct.
And how many days in are there?
I can't tell you specifically. So
20 days or 20 business days? Is it just 20 days?
it's 20 days, unless it says, this one says 20 business days. So
Ah.
unless it says business,
If you assume
it's
just.
it
days.
includes the weekend. So this shall not exceed 20 business days. So it's a little longer. You don't count the weekends. So same for the applicant. So the
Right.
county has 20 business days and the applicant does. And so both the planning commission and the county commission planning commission recommended and the county commission upheld that recommendation, was that at some point in these 4 review cycles, they wanted it to be on an agenda at the planning commission as a public meeting so that anybody could come and be aware of the subdivision and listen in. It is not a time for the public to comment on the subdivision. It is mainly to make them aware. And they could always email written comments to
The county.
the county.
Make-
And, but again, those comments have to relate to the code required standards. So the reason that this went down was perhaps commissioners listening to public clamor, which is things that the audience and members of the public are saying about maybe, I just don't want to have this subdivision in my backyard. But does it have anything to do with the approval criteria? So that's just what we need to pay attention to as we're reviewing these things. And so if you have, yeah,
Trish,
Can I ask you a
quick question.
yeah.
So with public notice, Amy, are you guys still doing like the signage near the property? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Is
I was checking this
notification
one
still part of
For
it?
subdivisions, we do not.
Okay,
No.
okay,
and it's-
rezones or something like that. Gotcha.
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's where- here,
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank
This
you.
is
Yeah.
called administrative
Yeah,
at their legislative.
yeah, gotcha.
Correct.
Thank you.
He thinks so.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of run you through that. And for the next one, I'll do a staff report that, really points out some of those sections or points out requested revisions we've made that maybe aren't reflected, things like that. But this I just thought, they're our guinea pig, let's put it that way.
How do you feel about that?
Okay.
All right, you're like, yeah,
And
yeah,
you're the-
I'll back you to
You're
be.
the applicant?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Jaren?
Yeah.
Guinea.
Yeah,
Guinea,
okay.
okay.
So I'm gonna pull up
Sitting
the,
right here.
yeah, so I'm gonna pull up the plat so that we can put it on the screen.
Darren, where is it at-ish? Do we need to?
Well, so,
Oh, sorry.
well, so,
Okay,
so,
yeah.
Yeah,
this
that's, let Amy work,
so hang on.
everybody.
So again, this is, if we have questions of the applicant, he is here if we have them. This is not a formal thing like a
Yeah.
public hearing where, okay.
Yeah, I understand all that.
Yes, it is up in the LaSalle's, and I could pull up,
Excellent.
an aerial if you would like me to.
I think I got it.
It's
okay.
shown in the handout, more or less.
Yeah,
The project location.
and,
Yeah.
hang on a second.
Yeah,
the
we
top
should
of
have blown up a little
Yeah.
bit.
I got it.
Yeah, I'll blow it up. Hang on. I'm trying to get there. Okay. So yeah, if you want to see the vicinity map better. See if it will let me. Okay. Did this help? Okay,
Oh, yeah.
that's as far as it'll let me zoom in, so I apologize. So it's this parcel here, and it's pretty close to the San Juan County line. Any questions about where it might be? Is everybody okay? You want me to pull up an area? I do not know.
Do you know who owned it before?
And is that relevant to what we're
Just- I
talking
would know
about?
where it is.
Yeah, you know what I do.
I'm just trying to keep everybody on track here,
It's a
okay?
personal question I use,
Okay,
because I think I know it if I knew. who.
Yeah.
That's okay. that's
okay,
really-
would you like me to pull up an aerial? Will that help?
Yeah, that'd be great. It'd
Farnsworth?
be kind of interesting just to see.
Sure,
I
There
think
it
it's
is.
the
I will
name,
try.
when-
Um,
It doesn't matter, it was just for me to know,
Yeah.
it's close to the Salon building, so that's. Yeah, I know where the property is. Kind of.
give me 1 second here.
It doesn't matter, Amy, I'm okay with it.
Well, some folks have requested the aerial to
At
really
least
help
give
them.
us, I think it'd be kind
What
of
could
to
you
see.
know? They'll be able to-
Hang on, the website, this might have a little bit of trouble with this.
Mhm.
It's a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah, it's data intensive.
Yeah, so hang with me here.
I could look it up when I was home for that. I really
Okay,
didn't think
there,
about it.
now we're getting, yeah. See the.
Okay. So this is the subject parcels right here. See if I can zoom in a little bit more.
Just in
Does that
time.
help you see?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay,
Yeah,
It's the S and the L in the middle,
this
not the
one?
peripheral.
Yeah.
ones, Just to be
Yes.
clear.
so, well, actually, so it's both of these,
Yeah,
right?
the S and the L in the middle.
Yes, we can call it that. Yes,
so the S and the L accommodates all 500 acres,
correct.
so you're removing the line to make the subdivision?
The subdivision is, well, let's pull up the plat,
Yeah,
okay?
this here.
It's not gonna hit the other one.
So let me
Doesn't look
pull up the plat. I'm just having technological challenges, so just bear with me.
You're much better than I am.
And you don't think that was Farnsworth, Mary?
It is.
Mary?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I was thinking, is it not, whatever that name is, that has a house, I think right there
On
on
the
that L.
proposed plat, I don't see any boundary between those two.
And Mary, you don't think that was Farnsworth?
I
No.
don't know, I think Farnsworth is more inland, or in town.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's also important to point out. The shape file that's online. No reason to believe that line in the middle exists, because when Amy clicks on it, they both get highlighted automatically. There is computer coding and whoopsies. This one here is the one that matters.
The one that-
well, and oftentimes it has to do with the assessor's office too, which Mary knows.
Recorder's office.
So one may be assessed differently than the other, and so. So this is what we are going to look at. So this is the proposed subdivision.
Oh, look at it, it's just that little tiny corner.
Yeah, so one lot is the large, basically remainder of the parcel, okay? And then they're proposing, 5 lots down here in the corner, okay? So the access road is it is actually a county class D
Okay.
road. Or is it B? I'll have to look again.
I bet it's a D.
I
up
think
there.
it's a D, and so, but the county does maintain that road, so oftentimes. A D, the county does not, in this case, according to our, streets.
It's a class D on the streets layer.
No, I was stumbling because I don't know his exact title, but Bill Jackson, who's
Road
our
supervisor.
roads and maintenance. Director, supervisor, so he let us know that this is maintained by the county in the sense that they do plow when it snows.
Oh.
Which we were not aware of, but they do. And so, this property will have access, it already does, off of that road. So this is where, for instance, like our fire department weighs in, so they're showing a turnaround here in this subdivision for fire access and things like that. Brandon McGuffey did suggest that either A, this cul-de-sac be extended a little further out, or B, that this lot line here, I can't see my cursor. And lot 2 just be extended straight down. The concern was that the cul-de-sac didn't reach this parcel here.
Like the greater agricultural lot one.
Right, so that's a revision that we're going to request of the applicant.
And is there a minimum or a maximum for the cul-de-sac?
There is, and they're meeting those standards, yeah. So, but yeah, those are all things that, you know, when we go to that development review team meeting, everybody weighs in on. So, I'll go to the close-up version for you. So this is the close-up version of those lots that are being created. And here's the big, large agricultural parcel that's remaining. It's showing part of that on here, but so you can see in more detail the lots that are proposed. And if you recall, in range and grazing, it has to be a minimum of 5 acres. So as you can see, all of these are exactly 5 acres except for lot 3. Which is slightly
Larger.
bigger, yeah.
5.2.
There are some existing structures, so they're showing where those are, so you'll see, which is required for a plat. So they're showing, an existing residence, a pump house, they're showing an original homestead, and they're showing the approximate locations of where they'd like the proposed residences to go. So, you'll see those on each one of these lots. So it's one dwelling unit for each lot. They can all have accessory dwelling units if they want to, but that would not be part of this plat, okay? So staff had some comments as far as GWSSA and the health department. So GWSSA, this is not in their jurisdiction. So the health department made a few comments on the proposed septic system. So they've got their leach field down here in lot 6, and actually all of the lots will hook up to that leach field. So they'll have to record easements through each lot for those septic lines to reach the leach field, okay? And they can do that, they can have a shared.
Okay, Red Cliffs had a problem when they had their leach field
Mhm.
in the property lines, or something you might talk to the applicant about. Those lines cannot go over property lines. But Orion should know that, so you might chat with him a little bit about that.
Yeah, I believe they can if there's an easement, but we'll double check with Orion.
But there was supposed to be one at Red Cliffs.
Okay.
They had to go through a whole new process, so it.
Yeah.
Just something to bring up. I
Absolutely,
had a problem with that at one.
I will ask him.
I took that septic course, and I just know you can have a communal system.
Yeah. But I'll ask him the property line question.
This is a property question,
Okay,
and how it crosses over something.
yeah. Okay. So as you look at a preliminary plat, contour lines are required to be shown on a preliminary plat. We've discussed this a little bit just because sometimes it can get real busy on the plat. But contour lines, for those of you that haven't dealt with contour lines before, I'm gonna zoom in. And if you see, I don't know if you can see my cursor over here. You'll see some numbers. So you'll see 7,300, 7,370, 7,380, 7,390. So that is showing you that as those numbers increase, the incline is going up, right? So that'll tell you that there's definitely a slope happening here up towards lot 4. Okay, and when the contour lines get closer and closer and closer together, that also means it's steeper. So so as you're looking at this, you can kind of get the lay of the land a little bit. Like lot 6, for instance, doesn't have a lot of contour lines. It's not as steep as lot 4, for instance.
But lot one has lot, is that why there's a building,
Sorry.
envelope?
Sorry, Mary.
Building envelope on lot one? Because of the constrained lands?
A lot 1 is this huge agricultural
right.
parcel.
Yeah, it's.
And they are
Lot
not-
three, lot three,
Lot
lot three,
three is
I'm
pretty
sorry.
steep.
Oh, yes.
It's got a lot of constrained lands on it. Will they have a building envelope?
Hang on, I'm trying to catch up to you.
It's up above, and it's up, yeah, right in there.
Got
They-
proposed residence on it?
They do have a proposed residence on it, and they can do that as long as the residence is not in areas above 30% slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Those
Okay.
are only 10-foot grade lines.
grades.
The heavier ones are, so it's.
yeah, that's why it's pushed.
Every line there represents 2 feet. This thing is pan flat.
Yeah, the heavy ones are
Yeah.
Pan flat.
Okay, so the things that, we look at are, this is a proposed private road. So those are things to take into consideration, and that's where our streets department provides feedback if the private road isn't meeting the standards of the county. The development review team comments on things like street names, if there's already street names in the county that are similar. Sometimes we propose something different for emergency services, things like that.
Those are
Um,
okay names?
Pardon me?
Tangren and Young are okay names?
No, I believe we've asked about to
Tangren's in-
change Tangren.
Yeah, Tangren's-
So, some of the things that it has not come back yet. So, we just had our DRT meeting, I don't know, a week ago. So, so that's just to kind of orient you. So as you're looking at these things again, the first thing to look at is what zone is this property located in? So this one is range and grazing. So then you go and you look at what are the standards for range and grazing? What's the lot size? What's the number of dwelling units allowed? All those kinds of things. So at a subdivision level, you're not required to show dwelling units necessarily. You're not even required to show a building envelope. This is just a land division. However, they're giving us an idea of where those things might be, because as we look at this, we do get concerned about it's the private road and how far from the road might the residences be for fire services and things like that. But when you see a lot of subdivisions, you will not see any location of where those dwelling units might go. And so when you're looking at the density calc, you have to think, okay, one dwelling per lot, and accessory dwelling units don't count towards density. Okay, so any residential zone can have an accessory dwelling unit and it does not affect your density calc. Okay, so so they have one dwelling unit proposed on each parcel. And lot 1 is proposed to remain agricultural, so there's no development proposed on that parcel. And that's where on the aerial, you saw the huge irrigation wheel. Okay. So. All right, so any questions on that? So this is kind of our first stab at what do we do when we get one of these?
I
And
have a
so,
comment,
yeah,
and it doesn't really pertain to this particular project, but it could on another project.
okay,
And it's under the same section under 5.41.
okay,
When you get to constrained lands,
Uh-huh.
if you have constrained lands on your property, your subdivision can be reduced by a minimum of 50%.
they're still in there.
Yeah, but this one doesn't matter.
Correct, but you are correct, Mary. So what Mary
But it
is saying,
would If there was, like, if you could, there are some out in the valley that this would.
yeah, so
Probably.
what Mary's reading is constrained lands have to do with steep slopes, floodplain areas, I'll let Mary read. Anyway.
Municipal wells.
Yeah, and so what that reads is if you're doing a subdivision in an area with constrained lands, your maximum density may be reduced by 50%, depending on how much of that land is under constrained lands. And then a lot of times we talk about clustering the residences to stay out of those constrained lands area, but you're still subject to that reduction oftentimes. So these folks didn't
That's why
necessarily,
when sometimes you do get
yeah, yeah,
housing spots on your land, on your subdivisions, you get
correct. Yeah.
For that reason, to keep them out of the constraint land. That's why I was
Absolutely.
wondering about number 3.
Yeah, no, you're on it, Mary. Yeah, okay,
ERT meetings, many of them.
yeah. So the next step for this applicant is we're going to say, you know, we met the requirement of going to the planning commission. And if you all see anything you want to ask questions, as we already are, or comment on as it relates to those code required standards, this is your time to do that. If you think of something later, certainly email us. Hey, I forgot to ask about this or whatever. So the next step in this one is, I think we'll respond to the latest comments, and then staff will approve the preliminary plat. And then they have so much time to submit the final plat. So the final plat will reflect what was approved in the preliminary and have the signature lines on it. So when you see a final plat, it has all the spots on the bottom for the county engineer to sign off, for the county commission chair, all those kinds of things. But now that we're in this process, where the land use authority is the planning director, the final signatures on this one, for instance, will be the planning director, zoning administrator, it'll be the county engineer, it'll be they always have Dominion sign it, because they claim they can't put utilities unless they're on the plat. And then, but for these, in this new process, typically what would happen is the county commission, for the final plats that have been going, the county commission chair would sign, the county clerk would sign, and then and the applicant signs it, and then the whole thing goes to get recorded. So in this instance, it'll just be the zoning administrator that signs, the county engineer, the county surveyor, and that type of thing. So you don't usually see those. That's when it kind of, boom, goes to the county commission. So, but yeah, any other thoughts on this one for now?
If Orion's happy with the leach field, I'm happy with the leach field.
Yes.
I just saw there was a lot minimum standard of 100 feet, and I thought that lot was for. Like, I can't really see on that, but you had already said the fire guys were wanting to like. Open up that cul-de-sac or something, I mean, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And Aaron, do you mean lot width, or do you mean frontage on a street?
you were saying there's another cul-de-sac thing, and then in that code, it said their minimum lot width and range and grazing was 100 feet. So I was like, oh, it seems like it pinches down. Especially if there's a proposed residence, if we're like
Yeah.
talking about fire breaks and stuff, like,
Yeah,
that was the only thing.
sure. You're saying lot 4?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but it sounds like that fire.
Yeah,
People
so
raise, so-
it talks about average lot width,
Uh-huh.
and I think it
Oh, is it
says.
the average can go, okay.
Correct, and so lots can kind of shrink down towards a street, but there is an average lot width,
Yeah.
and so look, these are all, but no, good catch though, Aaron. Making sure we're paying attention to those things is good. There is a minimum lot frontage for all new lots created. And so that's the other thing I didn't show you guys.
Well, the cul-de-sac has a section on that.
Oh,
Yeah, but the cul-de-sac has a minimum radius
Right,
that it has to comply with for the fire department. But then each new lot that's created has minimum frontage on a street. So whether it's a private street or a public street, it has to have, I think I gotta pull it up.
50 feet.
It's 50 feet for regular lots, I believe, and then for flag lots, it's different, where you have a little flag, it's 20 feet, so. But this is meeting those standards.
Measurement for your width on the street comes back like 30 feet or something, right?
Yeah, interestingly, a lot of places I've worked, you actually take an average and there's a calculation, you run a line vertically down the lot and horizontally down the lot, and there's this whole calculation. Our code literally just says 30 feet back,
Hmm.
just interesting.
Engineering.
makes it simple.
Yeah, so there's been some comments about, access off Mesa Road as far as if they want to have a gate there. The fire department is going to require that it have a knock box, they call it, Knox box, where they put in a code and
Yeah.
a key comes out or
Yeah.
the gate opens or whatever it might be. The other thing to consider with this is there are a few access roads that go through this property. And we've talked with the applicant about it and we've pretty much worked through that, but you'll see this road coming down here. And on the aerial, you can really see it coming down here and then just dying off of this plat. Well, it does access some other parcels to the south. So they're gonna be recording that shared access agreement and all of that for those parcels down there. And then there's also some lots.
Cause that public road that goes through there is the only access to like the tip of the South Mesa. Like that's,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
that would be my only concern is like the access.
absolutely.
On that, but that sounds like it's mitigated.
Yeah, so you'll see the little, if you can see up here, my cursor, which I can't. So here's where one of the roads comes. And then there's also a road. And you can see it kind of comes and comes up to this property here. So that is also remaining, that access. Yes, and then you'll see it coming out over here too. So they're gonna be secure. It's kind of been like a prescriptive easement all this time, but they're going to record actual access.
How does, this is just for my edification, because this comes up, came up big in the crazy mountains up in Montana where I used to live a couple weeks ago. What's the follow through for that? Is that on like some master development thing or like how do we make sure that actually happens?
So oftentimes it'll be shown on the plat as a note.
Right,
So you'll see note 1 and it'll say, and it'll have a note on the plat. And it'll say mutual access agreement to be recorded with this plat, da, 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 da. So there'll be notes on that. And then when the plat is recorded, that's where staff and the recorder's office checks to make sure those documents that refer to the notes are there.
a lot of
Or the-
responsibility for staff.
And the recorder's office, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would look like this map that you have on there on the data or on the side tables.
Correct, yeah. So a lot of times you'll see the notes over here on the side. Sometimes there's so many notes that they'll be down here, they'll be lots of places.
So do we need to see that then?
No, you do not. The
Okay.
staff needs to see
Oh,
it.
no, but like, I mean, my main concern is like public lands don't get cut off, right? So like,
Right,
that's my only concern. It's
Okay.
like because that tip of that mesa, there's a wilderness study area and there's another spot on there that would be the only access to public lands.
right, okay,
So like, I mean, I
yeah,
don't really, divide all you want, I don't care, but like that's my main concern with
Okay.
these guys, cause I look up. Has historic use and whatnot, and it's like, I mean, just looking at a Gaia app, it's listed.
Oh, and you can see it on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
aerial for sure.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, Aaron, yeah.
My only, because
No,
I
yeah.
am certified in septic use, my only thing would be like. Because how even those topo lines
Mhm.
go up only 2 feet, man, you might have like a 15 feet deep septic tank by the time you're done with it, so I'm
Sure.
like. I don't know, I mean, it's not in the final thing, but I would just look at that,
Yeah.
because then you're having crazy equipment to do that.
Okay, I've got a note
It
about
has to
that.
run downhill, right? So.
Well, it is, the leach field is placed at the top of a gully that feeds Mill Creek.
Yeah.
But like I said, if Orion's happy, I'm happy.
Yeah. I would try to not pump sewage, that's what I would try not to do with that.
Yeah. Okay. I've got double check with Orion. I've got public access to the public lands.
Yeah.
Definitely remains and. Okay. All right. So you'll start to see these coming at you. And the next one you'll see, I'll do more of a staff report that just maybe points out things you need to pay attention to or if we feel it's meeting all these things, all the standards, and anyway, we'll take a stab at it, but it'll be kind of be like a regular staff report.
Mhm.
So, okay. What do we got next?
Next is a continued discussion on recommendations of code revision for housing.
Yeah. And that was, again, like Tony said, he thought we were gonna put it on the February 10th,
It is,
or no,
oh,
sorry,
there's,
wrong date. Yeah,
yeah, February 10th.
so it's up to you folks if you want to just wait until February 10th, because that was my bad, putting it on the agenda. Or if you want to discuss anything right now, and also just kind of for Megan's, orienting you on some things. So so we're about to do, what's called a request for proposals, an RFP. We like to use lingo around here. So we're gonna do an RFP to look for a consultant that is going to be sort of the lead project manager, the lead writer and organizer of the new land use code. And so once that consultant is on board, they will develop sort of a strategy and a timeline as far as goals and objectives and when we want to finish this and how many public workshops do we want to have, how many planning commission, how many one-on-ones do the commissions need, things like that. And so once that person has kind of helped develop that schedule with staff, and we've talked about having sort of a code revision subcommittee, code revision committee where somebody from the planning commission would be on it, somebody from the county commission would be on it, you know, various departments. And so that way everybody kind of keeps abreast of what's happening. And then there may be even little smaller subcommittees that maybe research more housing stuff or research more street standards, or who knows what it might be. So, what we're talking about is the planning commission certainly recognizes there's things in the current land use code that are not working for how can we incentivize housing? How can we make the development of housing easier, more, want to rephrase how I said easier, but make it more, the standards more clear and objective and easier for people to understand, and maybe not have so many hoops for people to jump through and make it more difficult and cost more money. So that's what this group is wanting to kind of hit and start talking about. And that would be then, we would kind of come up with some ideas and we would send these to the new consultant once they're hired, and we'd send them to the county commission to look at. But we're, this entire land use code is what's going to be revised. And so that process will take all the way till September or October. If we're on it. So it's a long process. And you'll start to see when we get the consultant on board, they'll start to tackle various sections of the land use code. So if you look at back to the code online, so the land use is a title of multiple titles of the county, right? So there's titles that deal with business licenses, there's titles that deal with fire and streets and building. So our title is the land use code. And so there's multiple sections in it. And that's what we'll kind of start to piecemeal and start to dissect and work with the consultant on. And so this group decided, you know, maybe let's get ahead, get a jump on this housing discussion and how can we help guide the consultant and help guide some of these decisions. So that's kind of where we were at in the housing discussion. And so to make things a little more complicated, the previous land use code, and I might pull it up to show you because it's interesting. There were a few things in the code that dealt with housing, and they were new things that were adopted that the county was hoping would open up some opportunity for more housing. And it was called the alternative dwelling overlay and the high density housing overlay. Those have both now, and there's interesting language. One says it will sunset on, and the other one says, once so many units are built or so much time has passed.
Yeah.
This is expired. So, I was gonna try to find that language.
Weren't we talking about the sunset one earlier,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the ADO and?
yes, so,
And the real temptation is a lot of work went into both of those, immense amounts of hours. Are there ways to tweak it? You know, it would have to get, of course, passed again, to be, not sunsetted or, not, we never built enough houses to actually make it limited, but are there some tweaks that could be done? And then, of course, there's all kinds of other things we might propose. That's
Yeah.
different.
So this is also the exact discussion we had on, can we collect some data and see what was
Right.
working and what wasn't?
Yeah,
correct, and I apologize, I did not have time
But I
to
know
collect.
that's a big job.
yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure someone's already collected it and, so I apologize, I just didn't get to it. So here's the expiration clause. It says, the ordinance codified in this section shall automatically expire after 300 HDHO lots or units have been approved or after 2 years, whichever occurs first. So the 2 years occurred first.
Well, it's an optimistic statement.
Yeah, so this one, although it's in our code, there is no longer a fee for it in our fee schedule. There's no longer an application for it. But that this section still applies to those that were approved and were constructed or still under construction. There's still standards in here that they have to comply with. And there's deed restrictions for the workforce housing and the affordable housing. So all of these kind of standards will still apply to those, but there are no, the code doesn't exist for new HDHOs. And the same with the ADO. So just to show you that one too. So that's the alternative dwelling overlay. And this had another, I like this code reviser's note. Section 4.9.7 states that the ordinance codified in this section shall automatically expire after 150 ADO units have been approved or 1 year after adoption. So again, this one expired before that many units were constructed. So that's where a lot of this discussion is focused, but I want to make sure that this commission isn't just focused on those and rather focused on what are some other ideas to help make housing easier to develop, or more clear to develop, better standards, less hoops to jump through, all those things. So there's things that everybody wants to look at with the ADO and the HDO as far as like what didn't work, right? Like what was dysfunctional about these two things that made it difficult for people? And I've been reaching out to some developers that have done projects under both of these to get their feedback. And it'd be a good, I'm trying to compile some of their comments. And it would be a good idea to invite them to come speak to everybody if they want to. And then some of the commissioners, county commissioners, planning commissioners are also talking about, have come to me and asked, is there a way we could revise some things in this, both of these, for those that already have an approval in place, but they're hitting roadblocks to finishing construction or to selling or renting units because of some of the restrictions. And so that's sort of another area of looking at these. So as we move forward, those are some of the questions about these sections, and maybe this is a good context to think about it for the February 10th meeting. But so as Erin is saying, one option is we look at the ADO and the HDHO and what worked in these and what didn't work, right? And is an easier option or a quicker or maybe it's a better option just to remove the things that didn't work and tweak it a little bit, include the things that did work and kind of keep it rolling, right? As the same names, as the same stuff. That's one option. And I'm not saying that's just you, Erin. That's one option. Another option is you scrap both of them you take what worked from both of them and you create a whole new thing. In the planning world, we kind of like to get rid of names and things that didn't work, because it can be kind of confusing when something carries on and it's changed. There are ordinances that would change it, but it can be kind of confusing as people come and go. Well, which ADO was this? Was this the ADO back in 2020, or was this the ADO in 20? So, from just a record keeping code standpoint, that's somewhat standard practice, that if these expired, sunsetted, didn't work, then we then create something new. So those are two schools of thought, do we keep it and tweak it, or do we create something new? And maybe it's just one thing versus two things. So anyway, maybe we'll come up with 5 new things that go in the code, who knows? But that's what we're looking at as far as what things were good about these that should be continued or carried forward, and what things really didn't work in both of these code sections. So, and some of that is talking to applicants, some of it is what are the numbers, the data that you would like to see as far as, okay, how many applications were there? How many actually got approved, and how many actually got built? So those are kind of and you can kind of see, okay, well, we didn't get as many applications as we thought, and that could be a number of factors. We didn't approve as many as we thought. Again, why? And then of those approved, not all of them ended up going under construction. Again, why? Right? So those are kind of the triggers to look at. What were the hurdles? What went wrong? What happened? Those kinds of things. So as you look at both of these sections, it's really good to read them pretty thoroughly, and we can have a great discussion on it on February 10th. I know from a staff standpoint, something with both of these, the overlay section of the code, Article 4, currently overlays are treated just like a zone change. So a zone change is a legislative decision which goes to the county commission, and it's discretionary, which means they don't have to approve a zone change. There's criteria that they need to pay attention to and look at, but one of the problems I think that happened is that if neighbors came out and were concerned about increased density in their neighborhood and they all came and spoke to the commission, that's hard to not take into consideration when you're trying to make a decision. You don't want to upset existing neighbors. You don't want to create a situation where there's going to be continual. So
That's the purpose of a public hearing.
it is the purpose. However, that is one of the issues with discretionary decisions, in the sense that if you really want some of this to happen, you don't make it a discretionary decision. You have very clear and objective standards that an applicant either meets or they don't. So
I'm not, just want to make sure that while we discuss civics, that public hearing exists specifically so that the county commission can make decisions informed by their community. That's what that's for. That's supposed to happen.
for zone changes, that's where they go.
Yeah.
So, but that did, when you look at the numbers between applications versus approved, that was a factor.
Of course.
There's a number of other factors, there's all kinds of things that went into play in that, right?
It's the planner's instinct to try and eliminate NIMBY wherever possible. That's unfortunate.
NIMBY is not in my backyard.
It's a behavior
Yeah,
that a lot of communities, especially ones like Moab,
sure.
fall into, and it holds up a lot of progress and it hurts a lot of people, and it's also people's right.
Yeah, sure.
It's a difficult nut to crack.
It is.
We're waxing philosophical. I tend to do that around 6 o'clock. You're gonna hear me get
Yeah.
really weird.
There's also a movement called YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard, right? So anyway, those are fun terms. But so that's kind of what the planning commission thought that they could do is, okay, let's start dissecting some of these. What do we feel were really good ideas about this? what do we feel, maybe that was a really big hurdle for people to have to deal with, or things like that.
So, sorry.
Yeah.
So, if the overlays are being treated as rezoning,
Mhm.
is that still, will it move forward that way too?
We'll
Okay.
see, yeah,
That was
That's
just
the
a,
conversation.
yeah. So a lot of places, in the state and other places in the country, an overlay is something where you have, small lot residential, let's just say. And you happen to be, near the airport, so we have an airport, overlay to alert people that you're in a certain radius of the airport. And you might have special standards that other people in the single lot residential, small lot residential don't. So it's basically like, here's your underlying zone and here's additional standards on you all if you're in this overlay. And so an overlay could be handled a number of ways, however you might want to approve that and place that on a parcel. So a zone change is one of those. Some people do it as a, let's see, I'm trying to remember, but it can be nobody does them as a CUP, but it can be a zone change, or it can be a special process just for overlays. Where it would, depending on what it is, like if it's a floodplain situation, you're really just looking at the floodplain standards, and are these properties in a floodplain or not? Boom, if they are, the overlay goes on them, right? Are these property in, an airport approach area? Yes or no? Boom, but then for this other stuff, like HDHOs and alternative dwelling overlays, that's, they decided to go the route of, well, this is optional. People have to apply for this. It's not placed on them because they're in a floodplain, or they're near the airport, or they have steep slopes, or they're in a riparian corridor, like all those things that would be based on mapping and based on your geographical situation. Whereas this is, you have to ask for it. So
The justification for the opt-in overlays was that ideologically, you don't. The governing body can't force its own change on your property.
Mhm.
And if an overlay is going to be treated kind of like a zone change and empowered that way, likewise, you should choose to opt into it. And it
Mhm.
shouldn't be like overlaid on top of it,
Right.
right?
Right,
So
Yeah.
that eligibility is designated on the map, these could be. But you don't, if we're treating it like a zone change, and it actually does affect things the way a zone change would, then it should be discretionary on the landowner. And
Yeah.
that was the spirit of
And-
that
and-
reason in
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
place. It was kind of circular logic, but it's
yeah,
And discretionary on the decision makers, because we were offering people bonus density.
Mhm.
And then the other thing they have is administrative, which is, I want to put a house on my 5 acre lot. I'm meeting all the setbacks and this, et cetera, you better approve it.
Mhm.
If they've got everything
Sure.
right there.
Yeah, and that's a building permit, let's
Right.
say.
Yes.
Or, some things in the code are administrative approvals, like we have site plan review applications, and that's where, again, existing lots versus creating lots. You have an existing lot and you want to put, a multifamily apartment complex on it. If you're in the correct zoning designation, if you submit a plan, then it's reviewed by the zoning department, building department, all those departments. And then we approve that administratively. So some things don't go to either commissions. But yeah, so that's,
can I jump in on it? I wanted to circle way back to a thing you were talking about as we were kind of like
yeah,
looking at the statistics.
Yeah.
Just for like the sake of our group,
yeah,
there's in order to understand the context of why these sunsetted and we still haven't gotten out of the crunch. You mentioned those, so like this overlay, this project, it got approved and it didn't get built anyway. It's really easy for us as volunteers to fall into a bit of Messiah complex and like, well, we didn't fix the problem. Once a project has been approved, our job is done and we succeeded. This body, we're not here to solve the cost of lumber, the impact fees for GWISA, we're not empowered to fix a lot of the problems that we're going to identify. That's just a big one. And when I evaluate the success or the failure of like community zoning programming where I live, when a good project goes through, gets approved, that's good, that's done. And, you know, we should understand what happened afterward. But we should keep, I think, a little bit of the context narrowed in on. But we did approve all these. And I'm sorry it didn't work out. I'm sorry the $500 doorknobs didn't really work out for you. But that's what I mean. We're trying to crack the nut of affordable housing here.
Well,
But
lots of
the
nuts.
lots of nuts.
Yeah, no.
We're trying to crack
any different ways.
But this conversation,
Yeah.
right now, we're trying to crack the affordable housing nut in this context. And we're not necessarily empowered to do that here. I'm not saying it's not worth trying. I'm saying we literally don't have the powers that are necessary to solve it for a lot of people. We can make course corrections and get closer to it, but we didn't, we very, very, in some contexts, narrow statutory rules about how much we can really tap the affordability topic when we did make housing decisions. We've got sidebars.
There's tweaks we might make to the HDHO, and one of them was this thing of can the finance person basically own the houses at the start, right? Something like that could have helped people, but it's gonna be very hard to crack the affordable housing nut. If we do, we're doing better than lots of communities.
And I think, no, those are all really good points. I just wanted to hit that word for a second. So affordable housing can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And so that's something that always needs a really good definition. So when people say affordable housing, workforce housing,
Yep.
housing for middle income people, I mean, there's a range of costs of housing, right? So I think this group will need to decide with the consultant and things like that, how we do want to define those things. So affordable in the realm of the federal government and the state government has very specific parameters. And I believe we should stick with what they say, federal and state folks say affordable housing is. Then there's workforce housing, a term that's out there in our community. What is workforce housing, right? And that's usually for folks that live and work here, but maybe don't meet the affordable housing income requirements. So as we talk about housing, these are all definitions that we're all going to have to decide.
Yeah.
What do we want to call this? What do we want to call this? But that word affordable, I get a little I feel like that should follow the feds and the state's definition.
I agree.
But we'll all discuss that and figure out what we want to call things.
Well, and look at the feds,
Yeah.
60% of the median income, 80%.
Mhm.
And then 120% or less than the median. I mean, they have
They have
this
broken
range,
down.
and of course, we have this problem of, well, the ADOs might have been kind of on the lower level of affordable, and the HDHO may be more medium-ish. And where are we aiming? And maybe we've got to aim for lots of different
Yeah,
places too.
and maybe there's different standards for all of those different
Right, exactly.
levels. So those are all things that we will all discuss and get into, and it's always helpful to grab other folks in the know or grab financial people or grab, as we begin all these discussions. And it's also great to pull in the developers that are doing this, like Community Rebuild, the Moab Area Community Land Trust, pulling in HASU, and hey guys, come in and tell us what's working for you, what's not working for you, what do you need, what, those kinds of things. So, yeah.
And they have wonderful stats on where, how many were 80% and lower people, literally how many people in the county.
Mhm.
So it's quite amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Moab area task force I was just looking at it and they have graphs
Mhm,
on there about what our target housing is.
mhm.
And that I look at that and then think about like how we're gonna do stuff. And I just kind of replying some to your email, Amy. I feel like what I was trying to do is I know we have this big push in front of us. And my email to the commissioners was basically like, what's your ideas that we can discuss? I was asking for input for being, because I know it's gonna be like, all right, this week's ADU week, and it's like, or HDHO week, and then I'm like, oh man, we should like, I feel like that should be in a folder of these points.
Mhm.
And that's why I asked if the commissioners had any input, because if they have an idea, maybe it's like, oh, they want us to discuss the, lending eligibility requirements or, non-local owning thing.
Mhm.
That's what I want to know what their like, what they think.
By they, you mean the county
The
commissioners?
general commission.
But
Right,
I'm
and
just-
that's why I said I guess why I said can of worms, because there's a difference in political acceptance of some of these things.
Sure,
And it's like, well, maybe we can revisit something the previous commission did not want.
sure.
And so it's like, well, if we can, in my opinion, is if we can build more of them, shovels in the ground is a better thing than a ideological purity.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay,
Sure.
so that's why I sent that email to the commission to,
Right.
as a fact finding mission. I didn't want to vote on anything tonight. I just thought because of our previous thing, that's what we were addressing tonight. And I was like, oh, sweet, like, what did they got to say?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had some points on that.
Yeah,
And,
and again, just to clarify.
yeah,
Cause I'm still confused. When you say commission or general
general
commission, or the,
commission,
I don't know who you're talking about.
the county
commission.
commission.
County
yes,
commission,
the seven
okay.
Member commission.
Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanted to make
yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
And so you're wanting the county commission to give us their ideas right now, or are you wanting the planning commission to?
I sent that email to the general commission, the 7-body
That's
member.
not a thing, man, county commission.
Oh, I thought it was referred to as
No,
general.
that's, that
Oh,
doesn't exist.
I'm
County
sorry.
commission.
That's okay.
I must
Yeah.
have been reading.
No,
something
it's
wrong.
okay.
Okay, the county commission,
Okay,
I was asking them for like their input
okay,
on things that could be reviewed on that.
okay.
And then I had my list of ideas and I was like, okay, this is folder A. We can throw our ideas, to have a discussion time, a workshop.
Mhm.
And those were the bullet points next. And so I know this is your, like, you're kind of running like the organizational factors of things, but I feel it's like, maybe every other 2 weeks, it's like throw all the bullet points on like, what do we want for this? What do we like? So that was my point was
Okay,
on that.
so. So are you, and just so- again, so I'm clear, so maybe I can relay to county admin, are you wanting the county commission to have a workshop on this right now, or just send an email with their thoughts?
Well, I sent that email to see what their thoughts would be generated on it, so that we can file it away. And then be like, this is the ideas
Okay,
for it, but I don't know, maybe I'm out of line, but I,
yeah, so they, so yeah, it might be helpful if the planning commission as a body says,
I-
hey, we're gonna start working on this.
May I help you out?
Sure,
Um. mm, For the next meeting and subsequent meetings, I'm going to try really hard to be responsive in leading this body and maybe taking a little bit of the load off of Amy so that we have a little bit more time and a little bit more follow through. Or it's like there was a spreadsheet, where was it? Here it is. And so I'm gonna highlight now that section 5.5 of our bylaws says that the chairperson sets the agenda. And if you guys, just so we all understand how conducting this business works, if you guys want to talk about stuff here at the meeting, email me. I will email Amy so that she can get it into the software program that Mikkel uses to create and publish an agenda. And likewise, if we want to have someone here to talk, email me, I'll get a hold of Hasu and we'll get it on the agenda. So Amy can have like the time and she doesn't have to field and interpret, because there might be situations where it's like, oh, hey, let's talk about this at the next meeting. And, Mary wants to talk about this at the next meeting, and Jerry and I already actually talked about it. We're gonna talk about it at the meeting after that. So use me as a switchboard so that we can kind of keep our business on track and on tempo. There's the ways public business works is it moving fast enough and is it moving in the right direction? Right, so just like,
So no, like I was always emailing Bob and Amy, so I'll just
just email me. And then if it starts to fail, there's only one person you can blame. Right,
So-
and I'm willing to take that risk.
I will add to that
Yeah.
in the sense that, it's best to also CC staff. Because some things require noticing, some things require the attorney's office to look at it, something, you know what I mean?
Well,
So-
I will email you.
Yeah, so
As
what-
things come up.
Yeah, so what we've kind of done in the past is staff will come up with a draft agenda based on applications and what's happening and where we
That's
have to go. And then we say, hey, Obi, this is what we're considering for the agenda. Did we miss anything? Do you want to add anything? So that's what we've been doing so far.
That works.
So yeah, we'll talk more. But I appreciate everything you're saying about keeping us on task, keeping things
Well,
moving.
Just giving you the time that you need to that Google folder with the spreadsheet that's supposed to get the red line, like it places good context around how we're gonna get through this year.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot. I'm not gonna be around. Our institutional memory is going to have to exist in written format, is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
And what do we think we want to do? So we probably want to make this discussion for the HDHO, ADO and other housing ideas for the next meeting. That,
Well, one thing I'd like to do to have, when we do that, is have a look at the actual data.
okay.
okay,
And I don't know what it's gonna take you to collect that, and
I
it's
think-
probably not minuscule.
No, I think other people probably have already done it. I just need to reach out to
Yeah.
see where it is. And if they haven't done it, I'll certainly get help to do it.
So
So,
Lisa had something in 2023.
yeah, I know we've got some recent data on it, so, I just didn't have time, so I
and it
apologize.
would seem like at the minimum, but we all should go review the HDHO and the ADO
In the code,
and
yeah.
code.
Mhm.
It's good practice to go to the code and see what we think might be changed, and at least when we get feedback from of what other folks have said were problems, we'll know at least what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
That
absolutely.
that would be helpful, and then maybe help me out here, any kind of general ideas that we have. I mean, we have these things like, gosh, I really think we better make sure the consultants know that we think the county or the school district or somebody may have property. We could actually get something done like the Royal Crossings. Because things don't happen, they don't happen. This is this terrible thing, they don't happen because they don't pencil out. There were years in which you could build, I can never remember the density, on highway commercial, you could have built affordable housing. There was, what is it, I'll make it up, 30 houses per acre, 30 units per acre, multiple family. It wasn't worth anybody's time because hotels could be built there. That's far better to have overnight rentals. I don't know what you have to do to induce someone to build affordable rental places in those places, because nobody seems to want to. My guess is they pencil out that they're not the highest value of the land.
Examples
my
of
guess.
things we cannot control.
Totally.
But in some way, we can control that.
Oh, good.
So another thing Megan ought to look at is the future land use plan. We put a lot of work into that. And there we identified nodes where we're gonna target certain types of housing, maybe a high density. And I think the key to getting a success here is, it's not just one type of housing, right? We do need some high density housing like apartment buildings. And if I remember correctly, that was the sort of thing we had penciled in for those nodes, right? So like the, near the university, and we had another one a little bit further south. And that would be in addition to what we do with ADUs or HDUs. And it's not one thing that's gonna solve this. It's gotta be a mix.
Yeah.
And the demographic, I mean, what demographic are we really building to?
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue right now.
Well, that's why that Moab Area Task Force, they identify per age group in income level.
They do.
And that's where I'm like, that to me was a really important
And
document.
how many houses are available?
Yeah,
If you look at our general plan from 1996 to, from 1966 to 2024, when the last general plan was written. Our population hasn't grown much.
no,
And we got a lot of houses in that time period.
but
So
those
what
houses that,
demographic are we currently building?
but if you look at where those houses gone, they've gone vacant. Second homeowners, which was in those graphs as well in the general plan.
Yep.
So it's like, we need to make up like that 25% of vacant housing stock needs to be built for, whatever that was made up.
There's a
And does that include families or just like a survey of like individuals from age? I have,
Yeah,
I wanna go look at it.
in the
but-
general plan, it has those numbers
Yeah.
on that. So I would look at the general plan, because there's a graph on there.
Mhm.
Sorry,
A lot of what Aaron's talking about, so it's the Moab Area Housing Task Force, MAHTF. And they started out as the city, the county, HASU, and some other folks decided to form this task force to talk about housing. So they also helped the county and the city work on the affordable housing plan. So the affordable housing plan is where a lot of the numbers and the graphs that Aaron's talking about were created and are now posted on the website. So we have an affordable housing plan that I encourage you all to look at if you have not looked at. And that last one was adopted 2023, I believe. So I would encourage you to read through that. There's a lot of data and numbers in that affordable housing plan. So there's a lot of resources out there that a lot of people have been working on, and it's incorporating all that data into, okay, well, what is our land use code gonna do about that? Yeah.
And Aaron, I just wanted to mention the problem with looking at the vacant homes is, like in the future land use plan, we had that graph or the documentation that showed a number of second homes, right? The problem with looking at that is that's looking in the rearview mirror, and that's over a time when there could be nightly rentals in those. When the nightly rentals were no longer allowed, that changed the entire economic equation for owning a second home here.
I guess why I said that was response to the idea, like, yeah, our
Yeah.
population hasn't grown,
No,
but like, where is it
I
going?
get
Like,
it,
we keep
but-
building, like,
but-
what's going on? And to me, that's how I understand it.
But my point was, we can't really look at the numbers in even that one without understanding what the effect of that change was. My impression is that change made a drastic improvement in the situation of homes that are used for nightly rentals, and I would suspect that there are vastly fewer people buying a home as a second home now, unless it's already on a second home license.
Since
But
I've
there's no need
moved
to
into my
support-
neighborhood, 4 houses on my street are just empty. They're just like, they come a month a year.
So
And
that-
I think like there's a difference between being switched to nightly rental and somebody just having their Moab house vacation house. And
Yeah.
I think that still happens, but
I'm sure it
who-
does.
who knows?
but, You
But
know,
I have,
you can never
like a little
say
bias.
there's something is absolute, right? It's
Mhm,
never
right.
100%
Right,
one
right.
and 100% the other, but I would sure hope that it's gone 80-20 the other way.
yeah, me
And
too.
if it has, I'd be happy.
I
But we don't
would,
have data to support either one of those premises.
yeah, I think that's the kind of like the rub, what we're talking about. Is what data we do have, it'll be really nice to see. I would be curious to find that PowerPoint slide that Elisa made in 2023.
Okay.
It was digestible, it had pie charts. Back then, when I looked at it, I didn't quite understand what I was looking at.
Sure.
This time around, taking a second crack at it with 2 years more data maybe built into the pie graph and the bar chart and the, you know, these are the number of HDHO, she had HDHO and ADO lined up together, in the pipeline, approved, built, occupied,
Right.
right? Getting that thing updated 2 years later,
Mhm.
now that I know what I was looking at back then.
Right,
That'll like, that starts a conversation,
Yeah,
right? That describes the pitch.
okay.
We can start there. Because I've got a lot of theories. Then my theories aren't very good for anything unless I can point at a chart that proves that I'm right.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. But
Yeah, and theories aren't bad, and ideas are never bad, so.
ideas are never bad.
Yeah, ideas are never bad, so, yeah, we'll get into that, and, yeah, so we'll do that February 10th, we'll start talking about that.
Thank you.
So I do have a request for that,
Yeah,
because I'm gonna be out of town and 99% sure I'm not gonna be available to be online. And if you could share any data and I can comment, I'll comment back to Tony and copy Amy, but I'd like you to share any comments.
Yes.
okay,
At this point, do we have any future considerations?
I do too. Hold on just a second. I'm just looking in the general plan code, I have it up here. There was a lot of information, just so if you want to get some stuff. I just remember seeing it in this stuff. I don't know, Amy, like if you, that may be a place where I thought they had a lot of info. on
yeah,
there
it
was
was
a
like the
piece.
first 2-3 pages, there was a lot of that area.
Yeah.
Every general 5,000.
Yeah,
I believe it is.
Yeah, anyways,
yeah, we can bring that up at the next meeting too,
yeah,
yeah, okay.
okay, it is in section 3, growth projections and trends.
Section 3.
Yeah,
Okay,
on that.
And we'll plan.
So, like, on our future considerations, I think Tony, you know, brought up a point, like, you'll be the point man, can we
Yeah.
send?
Email me what you would like, and it's like. Also, like, to get back to like the order that business is conducted in, when you have an idea. Drop it into, is this an action item? Probably won't be, but you never know what landmine you trip over. That's always fun. Is it an action item? Or is it a discussion item? Or is it a future consideration? Like, are we going to have to make a decision about this? Should we contemplate it? Or would I like us to all take some time to learn enough to be ready to contemplate it? Are the three like sort of the growth stages of an idea, right? And that's how Robert's Rules of Order are built around the idea of like, we all learn and then we all deliberate and then we all decide in 3 very distinct steps. Right. And so when like, let's, like, okay, I've got an idea, like, I went on Strong Towns and I saw this really cool idea about another kind of overlay that's not high density or an accessory or an ADU or something like that. Is that going to be a future consideration or is that going to be a discussion item? I mean, for all of us, that's probably going to be a future consideration, but bring it up so that we have enough notice to, I in general, get overstimmed when business happens outside of the context of the meeting. Mary gets it. So like, yeah, have the idea, figure out where it should go, or maybe I'll help, like Plinko board ideas into the agenda. But yeah, let's like, the first step is identifying what that is going to be. Is it a discussion item? Are we ready to discuss this? Because the intention of a discussion is to move on to a decision the next time around, So that's like discussion. We've been in maybe like the last 3 months or so, spending a lot of time talking in circles because we're nowhere near ready to even move things onto action item yet. You know, we're not there. We haven't even gotten the RFP sealed up, right? And so these discussion items are good, but materialism, like it's the idea is the topic is the discussion material to the decision that it's going to be made, right? That's a paramount thing to make sure that our business stays on track, right? That we're moving forward direction and tempo. Yeah, so there's reading to be done in our spare time, unfortunately. What spare time?
So I had come tonight with discussion items for that ADO and ADHO that
Mhm.
I would hope that the rest of us start, like, I would like to see things starting to throw at Tony and we put them in buckets for discussion items.
Yeah.
So that ADO is one,
Mhm.
the HDHO is one, and I don't know, like, we can't discuss things publicly. Like in an email chain, because that would be a quorum
Oh,
Yeah.
idea.
well, if you're just saying, hey, Tony, I'd like this to be a future discussion item,
Mhm.
Okay,
just email Tony.
yeah,
Another thing as we conduct business and we want to avoid quorum, the landmines that we trip on are, you can easily identify whether or not you're about to trip over a landmine, if you're talking about something's merit, or if you're talking about your opinion. You can share to all of the board and say, hey, I found this article. I think you might want to read it. Hey, here are these statistics. You're not breaking any quorum rules there. Until you say like, hey, I think we should do something like this. Now you've gotten into your opinion and you just shared your opinion with a quorum of decision makers, or, hey, guys, I think we should vote that down. That's a red flag, right? So you can email the entire body if you want to, but those are the things that trip you up, is when you consider merit or your opinion on merit, or imply that you might be leaning one way or another on a decision. The Open and Public Meetings Act, like, just let it guide you. Take it a couple of times a year just to be sharp. If you can dance between the raindrops and everything they teach you in that class, you'll be fine.
And Megan, there's an online OPMA training,
Mhm.
and sometimes they come and do an in-person.
And they bring pizza.
Yeah, so we'll get you that information. Back to training, education. So, we finally got a hold of the ombudsman's office.
Hey,
And so two things, and I'll email these to you also, but February 4th, they're gonna come and do a training specifically on conditional use permits
Mm.
for the county commission, and I would encourage you all to attend if you can. If not, it'll be on Zoom and you can watch it later. So that'll be on February 4th.
is that the regular meeting? 4
Correct.
o'clock
So it'll be a
Tuesday?
workshop at 3 o'clock
Thank you.
with the county commission. So if you can't make it, you can watch it later on Zoom. And the reason that we scheduled that one is there's a few CUPs that are coming up that are gonna be very complicated. And we're still wrapping our heads around one of them. So anyway, so conditional use permits, this body does not see right now. It just goes with a recommendation from staff to the county commission. In the code revision, it's something to look at with our attorney's office and with the consultant. Most places now have put CUPs with the planning commission. So I encourage you all to watch that training if you can, and you're welcome to attend if you can. Yeah,
Just so I know what to expect in the conversation. CUPs, a lot of places are sending a recommendation on a recommending authority to the planning commission, or like a legislative approval authority to the planning commission.
so CUPs are now supposed to be an administrative decision. They are not supposed to be a legislative decision.
Okay, so it's
But
an
our,
advisory thing that gets sent to, an advisory power that gets sent to the planning commission. You're mentioning.
no, so right now, the land use authority for conditional use permits is the county commission.
Right.
Okay. In the code revision, it may change because most places are doing this now. The land use authority for CUPs is the planning commission.
Right. but it's an administrative decision.
Yes,
Okay,
but
so-
it's odd, so it's an administrative decision, but the zoning administrator is not that land use authority, the planning commission would be.
But, so that's the final determination.
Correct,
Okay, that's what I was,
got it.
final determination
Yeah.
here or there.
So that's why it might be useful for you to listen to that training, because eventually it could land here.
Yeah.
In the code revision. Then, the last meeting in February for the planning commission, February 24th, I believe it is. There's two different ombudsmen that do training. One is Jordan Cullimore, he's gonna do the CUP training. And then Rob Terry is gonna do a planning 101 training here at the planning commission meeting on February 24th. We're gonna invite the county commission, so it would be a joint workshop. And whoever can attend, great. If they can't attend, they can watch the Zoom recording. So that'll be February 24th. So the Rob Terry was saying he could either do it at 3:30 before the 4:30 meeting, or we could choose a time after our usual business has completed, and maybe it would be at 6 or 6:30. So I need to reach out to the county admin to see what kind of works for their group, but it's probably gonna be, I know some of you work, so the idea was 3:30, which can be challenging for people that work full-time
Yeah.
and know that this is scheduled for 4:30 and now we want you to come 3:30. So anyway, just kind of a heads up, we'll let you know as soon as we can, what that time ends up
Mhm.
being. So, I'll let you know as soon as I know.
It'll be the 24th.
Right,
Yes, so we've got about 1 month's lead time to that.
yeah,
I can commit to making sure that I attend that. Asking questions of these guys is really important, and
Yeah.
if you can think of questions that you're going to want answered, send them to me, and I'll make sure that they get asked so that you can go back and listen. We got kids, we got jobs, 3:30 is in the middle of the afternoon.
yeah,
But yeah, send me questions, I'll ask Rob Terry,
yeah,
and then it will be on the record.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, because you can watch it on Zoom later on if you can't make the meeting, but that'll be a really good training. And so he's just gonna go over land use in Utah and what the county's rules and regulations are, and what a planning commission does, what a county commission does, what the general plan is, what the land use code is, various things like that. So it'll be a good training and a good refresher for everybody. But yeah, they're wonderful. They're great at doing the trainings. It's at no cost to us, which is fabulous. And so we're just gonna schedule it for an hour. So I'm gonna ask them to maybe half an hour, and then you all can throw questions at them, so. All right,
You ready to, yes.
I have more future considerations. So as putting into the bucket ADO, HDHO. I had some ideas, like I was wanting discussion items on, maybe the county doing a public partnership with like county land. I had thought of things like, oh, we could temporarily put an ADO on county land. These are ideas that I had. I also was going through the general Grand County General Plan, and I thought there's an interesting section in here on water. And I know this is heartfelt interest in some people's thing. It's 8.1.2. It says monitor regional water quality and quantity both within aquifers and watersheds, collecting data for annual reporting and calibration of development plans. I think that's something that sounds like the planning commission and the planning and zoning department is charged with. I don't think there's like an entity that really does that.
That's the state DEQ, Divisional Water Quality.
Mhm.
I don't think the county is obliged to do that. I think monitor pulls a lot of weight in that sentence.
So
You can,
this is the county plan.
Yeah.
And so the county has to, like, in theory, should try to act on these things.
Monitor could mean someone at the county calls up someone at the Division of Water Quality, says, we good? Yeah, we're good. that could be monitoring. Well, that's what I mean. Monitor pulls a lot of weight in that clause.
Doesn't Orion do a lot of that too?
Yeah,
Sure.
in conjunction with
reports
the
up.
health department, yeah.
He reports up to DW.
And what section are you in right now?
Section 8 on water. And it further goes into talking about, purpose of state government okay. Goals and strategies regarding the protection of drinking water call for land use code and zoning map amendments to implement approved water source protection plans. So I don't know if that's, things going forward with our consultants on that. Goals and strategies call for land use code and zoning maps. That's our ballpark on that. And I know that,
That paragraph in context is describing a specific state program. So that's just not like, you can't just take that sentence out of the context of its paragraph and say that's a policy for the county.
yeah, I know. I guess what I'm getting at, Tony.
That's
is this.
describing it. The first sentence is the purpose of this state local government cooperative program. They're describing a specific thing.
Right.
Right.
And
They're
I'm
describing a specific
If
thing.
a project came in and there was an issue with some water areas, they go to the general plan and it says, hey, this is what it says here, so we have to pay attention to this. We can't just allow you to do this.
Well, one of the
That's why it's
things, I totally get that. And one of the things I thought was funny is like, we have this build out that exceeds our water capacity.
Always have,
What's that?
always have.
Exactly. And so, what,
Yes.
I don't wanna see somebody apply, like, this has happened in Denver lately. They built the houses, no taps. And so, it's like, it doesn't seem like there's a central number somewhere on that. And I'm just wondering if that's something we want to address.
It's not something we can address. Like very plainly, the plan, okay, so in the context of water, just put it plainly, the state of Utah Division of Water Rights, I'm borderline here. The state of Utah Division of Water Rights and the US Geologic Survey don't agree how much water is in the valley. Until they figure that out, the county is not really empowered to like figure that out themselves. And even when the county does become enabled to address those issues, the planning commission is not the body that would talk about it. I have my own opinions about the fact that Grand County does not have a public lands or natural resources coordinator. I think they ship a lot of stuff into Amy's shop. Emory County has a public lands and natural resources coordinator. And that's Emory County, guys, come on. Right, so there's a lot happening there.
I just
And
think it was funny when we did
I'm
the
not
future
saying-
land use map in Thompson. It was like we were building a city in the sky. It was like, oh yeah, you want a Walmart here and we'll put
Yeah.
this here. And then it was like,
man, I'm
they
not
had
telling,
8 water units.
I'm not disagreeing with your
Yeah.
concern or even saying that your concerns are invalid or anything like that. I'm just saying that like. I approach a lot of public administration like a mass casualty incident, and you gotta throw out black cards fast. That's we're not doing CPR and saving that
Right.
from this table.
Well-
So just black card it and let's work on what we can work on.
This is what I wonder about Tony, though.
Yeah.
It's like, we're doing this development and the Grand County Commission
Mhm.
was like, oh, there's no problem here. But like, wow, is there 1,000 units left? Is there 500? Is there 20? What happens if there's 20? What happens the 21st house that gets built? And that is planning.
Yeah,
issue.
yeah, it is a planning issue in so much as that we are an advisory body.
Mhm.
We will give the county commission the best advice that we can. I think, monitoring water quality and collaborating with the people who keep that data is the best we can expect our planning staff to do. And, I mean, what do we want to solve here? What do you want fixed?
Oh,
Like specific.
What do we want fixed?
So I would only say this, I mean, one thing is, of course, WISA says
Mhm.
we got water.
We have no control.
And
over
we have no
this.
control
Yeah.
over
Adam.
that, and we have, I think, some very minor water rights. I can never remember, but it's really small acre feet at all. And for the county actually has, but I'd say there are things we can do, right? And, you know, density is one. I'm thinking mainly of outlying areas at this point. We can suggest to the county commission that they do something to protect the watershed. If they put that in, that's kind of zoning stuff.
Mhm.
That's what we have some control over.
We worked
I
on the
think-
landscape ordinance for a while, and
Yep.
there's a whole lot of water.
I
that
think
needs
because
to
we've
work
got
out.
like,
Yeah.
we've got people who work and we've got moms and dads and I can't
Yeah.
do 7 o'clock every other Monday, guys.
Yeah.
So I'm just know this.
Yeah.
If you can't tell me what the action item is gonna be in 3 months from now, I'm gonna wanna know why we're talking about it. Okay, what's the action item gonna be in the future? Okay, because I agree with these things. I can't handle the stress of looking at them in the face every single day. All right, man, let's work on what we can work on. Show me the action item.
Yeah.
And we'll work together. Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Seconded? All in favor? There we go.
Seconded by who?
Oh, that was seconded by,
I'm sorry, man. I just can't be mad every Monday. I can't, I literally, I can't get upset every other Monday about stuff that I'm not gonna be able to.
Trish is going to be putting a water thing together.
Great.